So then we are back with the modern understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services are refined in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end as per Yirmiyahu the prophet. You will hear again and again and again and again per Yirmiyahu the prophet. Then the 61st chapter, we find the spring feast, the first section of it already completed. For the purposes of the second, it's not substitution, it is completion of. Then the autumn feast, where the world is preparing itself for the autumn feast. Then we find ourselves studying then the holy instructions, and most importantly, it was explained in the previous video audio, where then you found yourself understanding the false Messiah. A Messiah not explained, not taught, not proclaimed by the original people of the Messiah. So then we find ourselves studying further, because the Messiah at some point will discipline his people for not doing what they should be doing after 2010. Then let's study then what it means, Sheol. And then the great question, is there an inferno, a place where then a person after death then is going to be in torment then for the rest of life? There is obviously a place for those who are not in the Messiah. And the scripture is very blunt as far as what can we understand of it. You find in Psalms, you find in Revelation, you find many of the disciples. If you die without the knowledge of tabernacling, your soul, not your spirit. Your spirit is simply there for your own quest. What can we say? What does it mean, the spirit of Elohim, or the spirit of the Creator? You can imagine as a lifeline. There are step-by-step formation in each of us lives. The Creator places the lifeline a step ahead of you. You have to walk the path pre-established and then use your safe line and then link yourself with a lifeline provided by the Creator. When you take the step, then you learn. Then when you are ready, then the Creator Himself moves the lifeline then a step ahead of you. You have then to understand what you've learned plus the new step, what it takes to move you on your own strength by your own initiation until you get yourself linked again with a lifeline. You have to understand that each of us, we have the liberty of doing properly or not. The Creator, He takes the lifeline away from us. And based from what we've learned, we must decide ourselves if we are worthy. We maintain ourselves in what was taught until we reach then the lifeline once again and link ourselves up with it. Then we stay for a while in another step until the completion of, then He moves further yet. So the Hebraic thought is this: the future is directly linked with the past. For you to understand the future, you have to be instantly and continuously linked with what was taught. Thus, when He moves the lifeline further, you have to understand then and maintain yourself on the path. Then, let's study then what it means, Sheol. Is there a place of torment? Obviously, there is a place of torment. If a person dies without the Messiah, without the understanding of the Mosaic law, based from what the Messiah has taken over with, then the soul of the person goes to Sheol, goes to the pit. That's where then demons and the entire torment of this age is at. Your soul then becomes tormented until this age then is completed. What is the time of completion? 10 years plus 9 years. Do the mathematical calculation. then the spirit returns to the Creator. Does it not Ecclesiastes speaks of it? And the spirit returns to him. Then if a person does not have his spirit, obviously the soul goes directed down. And the Messiah knows it because he spent 72 hours down there, and it's not very nice. It's not a very nice place. When the Messiah came out of it in the third day, he explained what it was like down there. And people were very aware of it. That's why the persecution was so great, because the powers of the inferno in this age and this earth were exposed plainly. And then the dark places did not like very much. That's why then Yohanan, he was found then on the land of Cush, because he was very far away from any place around Israel or then Jerusalem. He was extremely far. But Yirmiyahu the prophet already gave us a hint where he would be at, on the land of Cush. That's why then the restoration period starts with the land of Cush. That's where Yohanan was at. From there he was able to gather whatsoever documents he could, and he studied them, and then he was able then to gather teachings, Hebrews for example, and he then organized them properly, and each of those cities received a copy. Very simple. Because they had to teach other people. Did not the Messiah say, those who are then invited, only those that the Father draws? He was explaining, only those the Creator draws from the outside, placed them in the city, so they learned, and then they understand, and they become functioning people, so then they go out and form another holy city. That's the way it was. From the time of Yohanan until 1009, cities everywhere. At the moment, the holy cities are returning. So the world is going through a transitional time. And the computer is becoming then a link of trade, directly trade. Each of us will experience the excitement of trade as Ishmael experienced. However, in a tiny scale, because our computers then become a place of trade. As far as groups, as far as nations, obviously the Arabs will then lead the world's market via crude, petroleum. We're going to explore those areas later. At the moment we find ourselves then studying 2 Corinthians. We already detected then the false Messiah. You don't go to church. Church is a farce. It's false. It's a fraud. What you try to find is the first holy city on the land of Cush, per the instructions of the prophet. So then, we find ourselves then understanding Sheol. Sheol is the pit. Pit is where then demons are then thriving, because they are down there expecting more souls to torment. If you die without the Messiah, you're going to the first death. However, he's explaining a death related with a torment, because your soul can't return into a body anymore. Thus, the first death does not mean that your soul is going to die yet. You're going to be in torment until this age closes. Then the Messiah spoke in Revelation later, when the world then ends with a shout of sulfur, as it was during the time of the cities of the plain. Then while the earth is burning, then those souls in the first death is going to be thrown then in this earth while burning. Thus the second death. Then the souls of those wicked people and those evil people are then destroyed then once and never returns. They won't exist anymore. Then the new earth is then formed. Then the new Jerusalem comes down and then inhabits the earth. Thus the capital of the world, as per Zechariah's descriptions. So then, we understand what it means Sheol. If you die without understanding of tabernacling, you are going down, torment until this age closes. Then you understand, has no more excuses. No person is going to heaven when a person dies. Those were then lies because they believed a false Messiah. You never going to heaven. Your soul simply rests. Later then, when the earth is refurbished as per the instructions of the prophet, then with the sound of the shofar, those who died in the Messiah, with the knowledge of tabernacling, those who did work for the Messiah on his behalf, they will come out of their rest first, and they will be given a glorified body, so then they can continue on with their journey, thus doing what the Creator intended from the first place, an earth where he was then in charge. So then, at this moment we find ourselves then studying, obviously, the preparation for the autumn feast. And the nations are preparing themselves for the computer trade. There is no longer anymore an isolated country where they can enslave their people or civilize the slaves. Nations are being linked with one another by computers, where trade is going to become very prominent. So then, for these, obviously, countries must come together, as then they can understand the BRICS. 5 countries involved with a system that's going to be popular throughout the world. Then you find, obviously, Asia. Why is Asia so prosperous? Isn't that because of Shaliach Shaul's teachings? So then, we study these documents and we find ourselves sometimes as a country trying to avoid then the Asian market. Why are they avoiding the Asian market? Because they are ignorant. We should be always welcoming the Asian market because Shaliach Shaul taught them. It does not mean that they have no flaws. Yes, they do have flaws. But as the computer then becomes in charge of the scrutiny of the system, then people can do trade safely. However, as it was explained, you must have a computer yet in order to make link with the Chinese system and central banks of the nations and local banks so they can charge taxes. Otherwise, a direct line directly into the computer, nations can't charge taxes. Let's understand also the freighters. The Messiah spoke of the freighters of the earth in the 8th chapter of Revelation. What does it mean? They are in charge. Because as then trade becomes prominent, governments then subdue. Let's just study then for a bit the ending of this age, the ending of the world. What is it going to be like? What are the nations doing? What does it mean then, the final combat of the end? How is it going to be playing? What are the nations at the moment preparing themselves for? What are they doing? We're going to study these very profoundly, because as then both sticks of 37th chapter of Ezekiel are granted, nations are lining up themselves for the purposes of the Ishmaelites and then tabernacling of the Israelites, and then later comes the culmination ending this age. The Messiah, however, gave a warning. It's found then in Luke. Luke was a Gentile. He was not from the lineage. Every time you read Luke, every time you read Mark, you have to understand the Hebrew lexicon, because those were Gentiles. Use these only for reference, but do not take these studies as then the original lineage, because they are Gentiles. Let's understand then chapter 1:7, what Luke then tries to explain, but he spoke the words of the Messiah very importantly, because later became a huge persecution. Let's understand then what the Messiah then is explaining. The 27th verse, he explains, for they were eating and drinking and taking wives and giving them to husbands until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and then the Vesuvius came and destroyed everyone. He's explaining a great situation. What is he explaining? He's explaining that people were eating and drinking, having fun, and taking wives, and having husbands, and having families. Isn't that normal? The problem is the normality of it has to do with the ignorance of the original instructions. And again, as it was in the days of Lot, that they were eating and drinking and buying and having trade and planting or building. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, then rained down fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them. Thus it will be in the day of the revelation of the Messiah, the ending of this age. So what the Messiah is saying is this: there will be a great number of people ignorant of the holy instructions, and they will be caught unawares. There will be those who are aware of it, yet they are being mocked, because as it was in the time of Sodom, as it was in the time of Noah, there were mockers, and they were destroyed. Later we're going to evaluate more than Zechariah, the 5th chapter, and then understand how the nations are preparing themselves for the autumn feast. So please stay tuned. Much more coming up.